52 years ago, on the night of 24th October 1964, the British flag was lowered over the Zambian skies, and in its place arose the Zambian flag for the first time ever, to signify our independence from the colonial empire. This event marked the end of an era of British colonialism and exploitation in Zambia. It marked the end of foreign occupation and exploitation of our land. It marked the end of forced compulsory hard labor of our people and their domination by an invading force that had no moral or legal right whatsoever to be on our land in the first place. Our gallant freedom fighters, led by Comrade Kenneth Kaunda, fought the good fight. They sacrificed for us, and many died so that we could have this measure of freedom, a freedom that is almost being lost. Therefore, let us not let their labor for political freedom be in vain. Let us honor their memory, not with words, but with deeds, revolutionary deeds. Those of us who were not born at the time of independence are told stories of heroism and sacrifice. Stories of a newborn Zambia which sounds like fantasy today. How many of us can believe today that Zambia was richer than South Korea, or that one Zambian kwacha was more powerful than $1 US? Yet this was the reality at the time, and there was much more to marvel about. When the new nation of Zambia was born, it promised freedom to all its people. It promised justice, equality, and prosperity for all who lived in it. And indeed, our fathers who grew up in those times did enjoy a large degree of justice, equality, and prosperity. Food was in abundance, they had access to free education, they had free health care, there was no shortage of jobs. Even for those who had little or no education at all, they still had access to jobs. There was something for everyone to do, and as hard as it might be to believe, there was free housing complete with free electricity, hot and cold running tap water, and even free garbage collection for those who were employed in the mines and the civil service. That was until Chiluba and his MMD and their gospel of democracy and free markets brought about the end of that glorious era. Now all that is gone. There is nothing for free anymore, and we Zambians have accepted that, as if that is the way things should be, that people should die because they are too poor to afford medical health care. We know that something has terribly gone wrong with our nation, and most of us know that independence is now just a word, if not a distant memory of unrealized hopes and dreams. And so today we are forced to raise a question which should have been settled 52 years ago, the question of freedom. Today we ask, is Zambia really free? We are forced to wonder if the celebration of independence is nothing more than a mockery to the Zambians who, after 27 years of union and 20 years of the MMD and soon to be 10 years of the disastrous reign of the PF, still have anything to show for freedom except their free poverty. Truth be told, if we think critically and honestly, if we look at the reality we live in today as Zambian youths who are inheritors and carriers of the Zambian dream, what we see today cannot be called independence by any stretch of the imagination. Even the blind can see that we are not free. I mean, what are we free from when poverty and social strife is our constant companion? What does freedom mean to the youth without a job? What is independence when we know that our government depends on foreign aid to fund our national budget, when we have the capacity to finance our budget locally, only if we make bold moves to deal with the looting by foreigners and put an end to massive government corruption? What is freedom worth when we cannot control our natural resources and we opt to sell them to the same foreigners whose agenda of stealing and looting our wealth remains unchanged? Is this not the resumption of slavery by other means? Is this not the neo-colonialism that Kwame Nkrumah talked about? Think of it. We are told that freedom was won when the foreign exploiters and foreign invaders on our land were chased out and driven back to Europe. But today, the foreigners who are supposed to have gone have come back. They have come back in more numbers and with more money than ever before. They have come from all parts of the world: China, India, Israel, Ireland, Saudi Arabia, and even the Boers from South Africa and the white settlers from Zimbabwe whom Mugabe chased are here for our land. This time around, it looks like they are all here to stay. And what is most annoying, if not alarming, is that foreigners are more at home in Zambia than in their own countries and more prosperous than Zambians in this country. This does not make sense. Today, these once upon a time foreign invaders are now called foreign investors. We now encourage them to come and invest in Zambia. We encourage them to rape our laws, bend our laws, and plunder our resources with impunity. And then we wonder why a nation as rich as ours ranks among the poorest nations in the world. The foreigners have become gods in Zambia. They speak and the president listens. The foreign investors are untouchable. They are our employers. They are our bosses. They are our paymasters. And believe it or not, they are our advisors. They advise our elected political officials. And you wonder why our government makes stupid policy decisions that end up hurting the very people who elected them into power. These are policies which also favor the foreigners who never voted for them. Is this what we call freedom? Is this what we call democracy? Let us be mindful of history. And let us have no illusions of freedom. Let us remember that the foreigners' mission to Zambia has never changed, and it never will unless we take charge and set the agenda for our country ourselves. But right now, the foreigners are the ones setting the agenda for Zambia. They still have the same mission of extracting our natural resources at a very cheap price, abusing our labor and paying workers slave wages, evading taxes and polluting our environment. But what is worse is that the government has given investors a license to exploit us. They have turned a deaf ear to the cries of the people and even gone so far as assisting foreigners to exploit us. And so, can any normal Zambian still say that we are free? Can anyone with a sense of dignity and morality celebrate Independence Day with a free conscience? These are the questions we ask. But if that is not enough to stir indignation and anger within you, then consider this. Today we do not have the free education and free health which our forebears enjoyed, many of whom are still in politics and positions of power and business today. And these are the same chaps who tell us, the new generation, that we cannot have free education. But we know what the founding fathers promised us, and we shall not and shall never forget our birthright to free education and health care for all. Likewise, we must never give up or relinquish our right to self-determination as a nation without foreign interference from Western agencies that lend our corrupt politicians billions of dollars that we end up paying for. Employment too is a non-negotiable right, and we therefore demand it. Let us have bursaries and full scholarship for everyone, if that is what it takes. And if any government fails to employ or empower its citizens, then of what use is such a government? Such a government must step down and resign if it has any morality at all. But of course, our government is morally bankrupt. It is a government of the corrupt, a government of the inept and mediocre. This is a government that is colluding and collaborating with foreigners every day and in every way to rob us and deprive us of our rights. But there is worse. Poverty has never been higher than it is now in Zambia, with 86% of Zambians living under $1 a day, living in abject poverty. In any other country, such statistics could have triggered a humanitarian crisis or a revolution of the masses. But here in Zambia, it is business as usual. Even when 32 people die in a food stampede, in the middle of a religious crusade that promises food, we see nothing wrong with it. We just make short news of it, throw a few tantrums on social media, make a few commentaries, and life goes on as if that is the normal thing to do. Just how much can Zambians tolerate before we say enough is enough? Just how far can the government push us against the wall before we push back? Today the people are still hungry. They are still starving, and it is not just for food alone. Farmers are hungry for land and fertilizer. And so are the people who have been left homeless because some investor has bought the land they used to live on, and now they are destitute and squatters in their own country. Mothers are hungry for empowerment. Their children are hungry for good nutrition and quality health care. The youths are hungry for quality education. They are hungry for employment. They are crying for entrepreneurship opportunities. But alas, when a government is in deep debt to the IMF and World Bank, and the money in their entire economy is in the hands of foreign investors, very little money is left in circulation for anything else except to pay the hefty allowances and salaries of politicians and top government officials who squander it all on themselves. And at the end of the day, the poor people of Zambia have to pay for these heavy debts that are incurred. If this is not treason, then I do not know what treason is. But one thing I do know for sure: a people and a government that robs them this way are not free people. It must be mentioned that the present government is guilty of crimes against the Zambians, more so than the foreigners, because the government is, or at least should be, the public protector. The government is the gatekeeper to prevent unwanted foreign guests from coming in to harvest wealth that isn't theirs. But the government has thrown the gates wide open, and foreigners have come in like floods from all around the world to get rich quick in Zambia. And many have decided to stay and entrench themselves in our society by marrying Zambian women. As a result, all the legitimate needs, demands, and cries of the people cannot be met by the present political parties and their neoliberal economic ideas. All of them, without exception, fail to see or deliberately turn a blind eye and even dance to the tune and sing the song of the foreign investors, forgetting that these foreign investors do not mean well, and they have never meant well. The foreign investors are not partners in our national development, but rather, the foreign investors are enemies of our progress, enemies of our true liberation. The less opportunities there are for us, the richer the foreigners become. That is their logic of prosperity. And so I ask once again, in the face of all this evidence, can any Zambian, any patriotic Zambian stand and sing of Zambia as being proud and free? Is this really a land of work and joy? Are we really victors in the struggle for freedom? Or are we still victims, trying to run away from the sad reality that not only confronts us, but also demands our undivided attention? It must be clear now that we cannot escape our duty. Something has to change, and we are the ones to do it. We have to stand up for our human rights. We have to stand up for our economic rights. We have to stand up for social justice. We must reclaim the right to our land. We must reclaim the right to our industries. We must reclaim the right and assert our right to free health, free education, decent job opportunities for all our people. We must put the interests of Zambians first and foremost. We must struggle for economic freedom, and I must say that at present, none of these existing opportunistic political parties and their leaders have anything new to tell the Zambians. None of them have radically different ideas to share with the Zambian youths. All we hear is the usual political criticism. No visionary ideas are propounded. Therefore, we must look to ourselves. We must look to our generation if we do not want to be misled by the crackpots and dunderheads of Zambian politics of the stomach. We dare not fail in this duty. We dare not fail in this historical mission, because the consequences of failure will be too ghastly to contemplate, and the damage caused to our nation and our people, including the unborn Zambians, may be irreversible and irreparable. So let us resolve now to unite as youths and act decisively as one. We can do it. But if we wait, if we do not act now, we shall lose even the little that we have been left with. And we have already seen that when corruption and exploitation become a state policy, such as it is in Zambia under the PF, poverty automatically follows. The cost of living keeps rising, and the standard of living keeps dropping. We all have a price to pay for our indifference if we sit down and do nothing. Even our academic qualifications cannot save us now. As we have seen, most of our academic qualifications are not even worth the paper they are printed on. The jobs that are available are pathetic to say the least, and the wages are equally miserable. The best we can do now is fight for economic freedom and social justice, to build a society such as the Chinese and South Koreans have built, a society where even those without formal education or qualifications can still have a job to do or a business to run. I say, let us not bury our heads in the sand and pretend we cannot see what is happening to our country. Let's face the tough questions. Are the white people we supposedly chased 52 years ago not back again? And have not these same white people been joined by other foreigners in their scheme to exploit and abuse Zambian resources and labor? And have not the Indians and the Chinese become our new oppressors? And do not the whites, Indians and Chinese control 90% of all the businesses and money in the Zambian economy? Is this what we call independence? Is that what we call freedom? Just what kind of freedom do we have when foreigners still own and control our biggest mines and own all the farms, factories, construction companies, banks, bakeries, and even grocery stores and shopping malls? Honestly, what pride and joy is there in being Zambian when we own nothing of importance in this country? It is obvious then that ignorance of what freedom means is our people's biggest problem, and ignorance can only be cured by education, but not this kind of diluted education being offered in Zambian schools, colleges and universities, which teaches our people nothing about how to protect our resources and protect our sovereignty. We need radical education. We need revolutionary education. We need education that cultivates our people's pride, courage, self-belief, and faith in the possibility of the impossible. We need to inspire Zambians to be greater than they are. 52 years is a long time to learn from the mistakes of our predecessors. We must not make the same mistakes twice, but confront our challenges and enemies head-on and beat a new path to prosperity. We have to realize that the political freedom which the Kaundas, Kapwepes, and all the other freedom fighters fought for is only the foundation for another kind of freedom: economic freedom. Political freedom is and was never an end in itself. It was only a means to an end, a springboard to propel us into the new era of freedom, the era of economic freedom. Economic freedom is the key that unlocks all possibilities for national prosperity. Only economic freedom can feed us, clothe us, house us, educate us, employ us, and give us free health, and all at government expense. That is what compulsory taxes are for the free and unhindered provision of essential social services to all the people, regardless of where they are rich or poor. And so it is now left to us, the new generation, to finish what our forebears started. We, the youth of today, stand at the crossroads of history. We find ourselves in a very delicate situation where we can either make or break Zambia. We must do our duty to our country, bearing in mind that whatever good we do for our country, it will certainly yield immense economic benefits for us all, and all within our lifetime. I believe we can make it. So let us rise to the challenge and be equal to the task, and believe that if we are united, there is nothing that is impossible. I believe we have enough youths with the courage and caliber to move us forward. Let us not wait to be called upon to do what we know we must do. Let us offer ourselves voluntarily, willingly, and cheerfully for this noble cause of freedom. Let us ask ourselves what we can do for the economic liberation of Zambia. Victory is possible, and of that I am sure, because the wheels of history and the wheels of destiny cannot be stopped, and that the just cause of our people for true economic freedom, true economic liberation, can never be defeated, but shall be achieved, and in our lifetime.